It was a Tuesday night in 2013, around 11 p.m., and I was walking home after a long day at work. My car was in the shop, so I had been forced to walk the 3 miles home every day for a week. It wasn't a terrible walk, just under an hour, but it was exhausting after a full day's work. I lived in a small town in southern Indiana, where the roads were practically deserted after 10 p.m. The only vehicles you'd ever see at that hour were truckers heading to Indianapolis. About a mile into my walk, I turned onto a dirt road that led to my house, which was tucked away in a secluded area surrounded by dense forest. As I turned, I heard the distant sound of a motor, slowly getting closer. I glanced back and saw a van about a quarter of a mile away, moving at a snail's pace, without its headlights on. At first, I didn't think much of it. In a town like ours, it wasn't uncommon to see vehicles with faulty lights, especially from the nearby used car dealership. But then, something changed. The van suddenly roared to life, its engine revving loudly as it sped up. The headlights flicked on, casting an eerie light down the road. I felt a knot of fear tighten in my stomach, but I kept walking, trying not to appear alarmed. However, my unease grew when, just 500 feet from the turn, the van's lights went out again, and it slowed to a crawl. Now I was truly frightened. My pace quickened as I fought the urge to run. I kept glancing back over my shoulder, each time hoping to see the van turn off, but instead, it followed me onto the dirt road. My heart raced as I saw the van stop, the doors on both the driver's and passenger's sides swinging open. Panic set in, and I broke into a full sprint, darting off the road and into the forest. I dove behind a large rock, my breath ragged as I tried to listen for any sounds of pursuit. Then I heard it, a gunshot, loud and clear. My blood ran cold. I huddled behind the rock, trying to make myself as small and quiet as possible. Moments later, I heard voices. A man's voice, rough and commanding, called out, "I think she went into the woods." To my horror, I heard the responses of several young girls. One of them said, "Okay, sir. We'll find her." My mind raced. Who were these girls? Were they in danger too? Or were they part of something much darker? My worst fears were confirmed when I heard the man say, "Whoever finds her doesn't have to drink the blood tonight." My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't just a random crime. This was something far more sinister, a cult, perhaps, or a group of people involved in some unspeakable ritual. I stayed hidden, barely daring to breathe, as the search continued around me. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent waves of terror through me. I prayed they wouldn't find me. Minutes felt like hours as I crouched behind that rock, my thoughts spinning out of control. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I heard the blessed sound of sirens. Red and blue lights flashed through the trees, and I saw the figures retreat. The police were here. I waited until I was sure it was safe, then ran out of the forest, screaming for help. The officers rushed to me, asking if I knew anything about the body. Confused, I asked, "What body?" They led me to the edge of the road, where I saw the most gruesome sight of my life. A young woman, naked and gutted, lay on the ground, blood pooling around her. My stomach churned at the sight. I told the police everything, about the van, the man, and the girls. They promised to investigate and offered to drive me home. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every noise outside made me jump, and I kept imagining that van pulling up to my house. Around 3 a.m., I looked out the window, and there it was, the same van, creeping slowly down my street, its lights still off. My heart leaped into my throat. This time, I was smarter. I grabbed a pen and quickly jotted down the license plate number. Shaking, I called the police again, informing them of what I had just seen and providing the license plate number. When the police arrived, the van had already disappeared into the night. But what the officers told me next chilled me to the bone. They had checked the license plate, and it was registered in South Dakota. However, that same plate had been reported earlier that night in 4 other states: Vermont, Nevada, Alaska, and Texas. How was that even possible? The idea that this van, or perhaps multiple vans with the same plate, was involved in such horrific activities across the country was terrifying. The officers told me they would continue to investigate, but I never received any further updates. That night marked the end of my time in Indiana. I packed up and moved as far away as I could, hoping to leave behind the horror of that night. But even now, every time I see a van driving slowly without its lights on, my heart races, and I can't help but wonder if it's the same van, stalking its next victim.